Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohajer-10. Iran has just unveiled its latest combat drone called the Mohajer-10. But what has captured everyone's attention is the fact that the Mohajer-10 is a spitting image of the American MQ-9 Reaper drone. Along with a glitzy video, the Iranians have also released an interesting image that warns in both Persian and Hebrew to prepare the bunkers, as the Mohajer-10 flies over an Israeli nuclear facility. So what does this message mean for the state of Israel? Our next report gets you the details.
This is the latest combat drone unveiled by Iran. Resembling the notorious American MQ-9 Reaper drone, this indigenously built Iranian drone is named Mohajer-10. Mohajer-10 is capable of staying airborne for more than 24 hours. It boasts an operational range of 2,000 kilometers, putting Iran's arch-enemy Israel well within its range. Mohajer-10 is capable of flying at an altitude of 24,000 feet. With a speed of over 210 kilometers per hour, it can carry a payload of over 300 kilograms. That is double the capacity of the existing Mohajer-6 drones. In addition to this, Mohajer-10 is also equipped with electronic surveillance equipment and cameras. But how does the Mohajer-10 compare with the dreaded MQ-9 Reaper drone? The MQ-9 Reaper drone has a range of 1,150 miles with a payload capacity of 1,746 kilograms and is capable of staying airborne for over 27 hours. While operating at an altitude of 50,000 feet. 11 meters in length, it can achieve a top speed of 240 knots true airspeed. Long-range drones like the Reaper also require ground stations and satellite communication. Though in the past, Iran has captured US drones or parts of them, there is no evidence to establish that it has captured the MQ-9 Reaper. Used by the US Air Force, the Reaper drone has built its reputation as a deadly drone which the United States has repeatedly used to bomb targets in Pakistan and Afghanistan, often resulting in collateral casualties. With the launch of Mohajer-10, Iran has also released a graphic image of the Mohajer-10 flying over an Israeli nuclear facility, with a warning in both Persian and Hebrew that states, "Prepare your shelters," indicative of simmering tensions between arch-foes Iran and Israel in the region. A day prior to the unveiling, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu alleged that Tehran has financed and encouraged a series of recent deadly attacks against Israelis. In the past, US had also accused Iran of providing Russia with Mohajer-6 drones, among other unmanned aerial vehicles, in its war against Ukraine. Will the unveiling of Mohajer-10 bring about more biting Western sanctions? And more importantly, to what degree will this new upgraded version alter the war zones? Only time will tell.
The dreaded chief of the Wagner mercenary group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, is dead. What is baffling to many is that the man who played such a pivotal role in the Russian offensive in the Ukraine war has been killed in a plane crash. Did Yevgeny Prigozhin pay the ultimate price for staging a mutiny against Putin's Russia? Or did his plane crash because of an accident? Now, these are questions for which answers are not immediately forthcoming. But what is clear, though, is that Russia has lost a major pawn of its stealthy geopolitics. You see, the fact is, till the moment Prigozhin waged his mutiny, through his mercenary group of hardened criminals, the Wagner chief had expanded Russia's influence in Syria and several nations of Africa. And now that the Wagner chief is gone, what happens to Russia's interests globally that were being expanded through the tactics employed by the Wagner group? Our next report gets you the details. Now, who could have imagined that the loud and garrulous mercenary chief would also be so popular amongst the local people? This is the makeshift memorial that has sprung up at the Wagner Group headquarters in St. Petersburg. Local residents turned up to place flowers and grieve over the death of Yevgeny Prigozhin, whose private plane fell out of the sky under mysterious circumstances on the 24th of August. Exactly 2 months since he staged his mutiny against Vladimir Putin's Russian forces. Putin's reaction was terse, and there was no hint of any grief over the death of a man who, till the botched mutiny 2 months ago, was widely seen as one of Vladimir Putin's closest aides.
Пригожина я знал очень давно.
I knew Yevgeny Prigozhin for a very long time, since the early 1990s. He was a man with a complicated fate, and he made serious mistakes in life. He achieved the results he needed, both for himself and when I asked him for the common cause, as in these last months. He was a talented person, a talented businessman. He worked not only in our country and worked with results, but also abroad in Africa in particular. He was involved in oil, gas, precious metals and stones there.
The Wagner chief was a Russian asset. Prigozhin led from the front Russia's assault on Bakhmut. His face and imagery had become a bit of a mainstay in a spate of anti-Western coups in West Africa. And even if Vladimir Putin did not forthrightly admit it, Prigozhin's death is likely to have far-reaching consequences to Russia's expanding footprint in different theatres of geopolitical contests around the world. Ever since its formation in 2014, the Wagner mercenary group had played a pivotal role in the annexation of Crimea. In 2015, the Wagner militia, backed by Russian air power, had helped turn the tide of the war for Bashar al-Assad, whom Americans were pulling every lever to oust him from power. Since then, Wagner has expanded into other theatres of conflict. By tilting the balance of power through military means, it then secured lucrative business contracts. In Sudan, Wagner is involved in gold mining. In the Central African Republic, Prigozhin's mercenaries operate gold and diamond mines. In Mali, the Wagner mercenaries are active in the mining of diamonds and uranium, while in Madagascar, the Wagner is involved in operating a gold mine. In 2019, Prigozhin's mercenaries were roped in to provide security to the Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro after protests against him in Caracas. What happens to the Wagner group after Prigozhin's death is not clear. The militia could be dismantled and the fighters could be integrated into the Russian forces, or Vladimir Putin could try appoint a replacement. But what is clear is that one of the most flamboyant but loud pawns of the Russian chessboard has now fallen to his death. Nagorno-Karabakh is an enclave that is largely populated by Armenians within Azerbaijani territory. Home to about 120,000 people, the disputed region has been blockaded since December last year. Consequently, the supplies of basic foodstuff, essential medicines and fuel from the Armenian capital Yerevan have been cut off, resulting in basic supplies having dried up in Nagorno-Karabakh. Now, the residents of the enclave have alleged a slow-motion genocide, with hunger being used as a weapon. But Azerbaijan has denied any blockade, insisting that it was forced to act after environmental violations. Our next report gets you the details.
Nagorno-Karabakh has been at the center of a decades-long territorial dispute between the Caucasus' arch foes, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Two wars have been fought over the mountainous territory in the past 3 decades. It came under the control of ethnic Armenian forces, backed by the Armenian military, in separatist fighting that ended in 1994. Substantial territory around the Azerbaijani region was also taken under control by the Armenian forces, but Azerbaijan wrested control of the surrounding territory in a 6-week war with Armenia in 2020. A Russia-brokered armistice that brought an end to the war left Nagorno-Karabakh's capital, Stepanakert, connected to Armenia only by the Lachin corridor. The 5-kilometer wide Lachin corridor is policed by the Russian peacekeepers, ensuring free passage between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The corridor was blockaded last December by the Azerbaijani civilians identifying themselves as ecological activists, with Russian peacekeepers turning a blind eye. In April this year, Azerbaijani border guards installed a checkpoint on the route, further tightening the blockade. And tensions escalated earlier in July when Azerbaijan temporarily shut the Lachin corridor, sparking concerns over a humanitarian crisis. On the 8th of August, Armenian police detained a dozen protesters, mostly war veterans, in central Yerevan after they blockaded a government building. Protesters were demanding that authorities unblock the Lachin corridor. The next day, a group of protesters, mostly unarmed Armenian war veterans and army volunteers, gathered near the Lachin corridor. A scuffle broke out after border guards were pushed in a bid to unblock the Lachin corridor. As the Azerbaijani blockade of the breakaway region drags into its 9th month, residents of Nagorno-Karabakh are finding it increasingly hard to access food, medicines, and other essential supplies. Supermarkets are empty and public bus services have stopped due to the lack of fuel. There is no rush hour in the city and many districts have been left with no water and electricity. Chances are that the blockade, if not removed soon, may amount to a genocide of the local Armenian population. An assertion Azerbaijan claims is unsubstantiated and inaccurate.
Let me say exactly what they say. The crime of genocide could be creating conditions of life calculated to bring about the physical destruction of a group for ethnic reasons. That is a genocide. And that's exactly what happened there, because the blockade of the Lachin corridor has a purpose: to starve these people. These people, the only way these Armenians can live is if this corridor is open and they receive the food. And they are not receiving food for the last months, so they will die in a few weeks.
It is said desperate times call for desperate measures. Residents of Nagorno-Karabakh have restricted themselves to eating only what is produced locally. Even the food produced locally is delivered to Stepanakert only sporadically, as farmers lack fuel to bring their produce to the market. The crisis has been exacerbated by Russia's preoccupation with the war in Ukraine, as it is struggling to project its influence in neighboring post-Soviet states. Residents allege that the international community, despite their expressed concerns, do not really care about Nagorno-Karabakh's plight, as the beleaguered region has few natural resources. A local Armenian population, under siege for 9 months now, is hoping to avert a humanitarian disaster and could use some help.
The age of France-Afrique is over. I'm not the one who's saying this. This is what Emmanuel Macron said in the month of March earlier this year as he began his 4-nation tour of Africa. For those who are not familiar, France-Afrique refers to the French sphere of influence in Africa. This was France's post-colonization strategy of propping up dictators in its erstwhile colonies, to set up military bases and to maintain its stranglehold on the resources of the nations of Central and West Africa, even though they'd become politically independent. What is interesting about Emmanuel Macron is this: he is the first French president to be born after the end of France's colonial rule in Africa. In 2017, when he was still campaigning for the top job, Emmanuel Macron had famously declared that colonialism is a crime against humanity. And once he was elected the president, during his visit to Burkina Faso in November 2017, Emmanuel Macron won himself a lot of fans when he said, and I quote him here, "I'm from a generation that does not come and tell Africa what to do." But the question is this: has France really stopped meddling in the affairs of the Western and Central African nations? Well, take the example of Niger, the nation with the most recent coup in Africa. On the 26th of July, when the pro-Western but democratically elected government of Mohamed Bazoum was ousted, Emmanuel Macron was quick to react. Macron was categorical in his statement that he would not tolerate any attack against France or its interests, and Paris would retaliate immediately and uncompromisingly. Now, France has got every right to defend its interests in any part of the globe that it wants. But the obvious question that springs up is this: what really are French interests that France wants to defend in Niger? You see, Niger is the 7th biggest producer of uranium in the world. And as of 2022, Niger exported about 17,615 tons of uranium to France, which is 20% of France's requirement. If this source of uranium dries up, the French nuclear power production industry, even if it is not affected immediately, will feel the strain in the days to come. But uranium is just the tip of the iceberg. Anti-French sentiment at this moment is really strong on the streets of Niger, and the locals say that France is only itself to blame for this. The French policies are clearly viewed as neo-colonialist. The French attitude is perceived as condescending and paternalistic, while French engagement with its erstwhile colonies is viewed as vengeful. Consider this: since 1990, there have been a total of 27 coups in sub-Saharan Africa, and of this, 78% of the governments that have been toppled in military coups have been in Francophone nations. Analysts point out that the reason for this political turmoil in Central and Western Africa is the French policy of France-Afrique. Even though leaders such as Emmanuel Macron and his predecessor François Hollande have verbally tried to distance themselves from these pernicious French policies. The fact that France-Afrique emerged in the aftermath of the Second World War under Charles de Gaulle as a system of French exploitation of what were effectively sovereign nations has defined the relationship that the West and the Central African nations have had with France. The French African Empire ended only in political terms, but economically, even to this day, a total of 14 African nations have their economies tied to the French Central Bank. The countries such as Benin, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, the Republic of Congo, Guinea-Bissau, and Equatorial Guinea. All of them use the CFA franc as their currency. The CFA franc has a fixed exchange rate, and these nations must deposit half of their foreign exchange reserves with the French treasury. What this effectively means is that 14% of the African population that lives over 965,000 square miles of land, that represents about 12% of the African continent's GDP, has no financial sovereignty. So the events that unfolded in Niger and the turmoil in other Francophone nations are happening in a context. What is actually unfolding is the unraveling of the exploitative system of France-Afrique, of France's weakening stranglehold on the resources of the Western and Central African nations, even as Russia and China appear to be expanding their influence in this troubled African region. The United States has been jolted by yet another incident of gun violence that took place on the 23rd of August. A gunman shot indiscriminately, killing 3 people and wounding several others at a bar in the US state of California. The quick responding police officers shot dead the gunman, believed to be a former law enforcement official himself. More than 50 people are killed every single day by a firearm in the United States. Surveys show 57% of the Americans are actually in favor of stricter gun control laws, but the Republicans in the Congress have repeatedly stalled any measures of tightening gun control. Our next report gets you more details.
The land of the free is besieged with a palpable sense of insecurity and vulnerability. The endemic gun violence in America has claimed more lives this past Wednesday. Built in 1884, Cook's Corner is a popular long-time watering hole for the biker community in Southern California. Motorcyclists and enthusiasts gather for live music, open mic nights, or just to unwind and relax after a long ride. On Wednesday evening, a retired police officer opened fire on the unsuspecting patrons of the Cook's Corner Bar in rural Trabuco Canyon in Orange County. 3 people were killed on the spot.
Hi, it's 7:04 p.m. tonight. Our Sheriff's Dispatch received a call of a shooting occurring at Cook's Corner. At 7:06 p.m., our first deputies arrived on scene, and about 7:08 p.m., our deputies contacted a male subject who was armed with a gun. A deputy-involved shooting occurred, and the male subject was pronounced deceased at the scene.
The gunman was shot dead by the police. He has been identified as 59-year-old John Snowlink, a retired police officer with the Ventura Police Department who had been in service from 1986 to 2014. In the mayhem, at least 5 others suffered gunshot wounds and were taken to a hospital. 2 of the wounded are said to be in a critical condition. Guns have been woven into the very fabric of American culture and politics. United States, a gun-obsessed nation of 330 million people, is awash with over 400 million guns. With more guns than inhabitants, the United States has the highest rate of gun deaths for any developed nation in the world. More than half of US adults have experienced some gun-related violence. Despite these grim statistics, the Republicans, the staunch defenders of America's constitutional right to bear arms, have repeatedly, for years, opposed any effort to tighten gun control measures. Instead, they have argued that the way to deal with gun violence is to arm more people with guns. The political paralysis over gun control laws has made the United States one of the most dangerous places to live. You could be a child at a school, or shopping at a mall, or walking on the road, or having fun with your friends at a bar. There is absolutely no certainty that there wouldn't be someone armed with a gun who wouldn't open indiscriminate fire.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, you can of course reach out to me with the ID that you're looking at on your screens. I'm your host Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.